thrive in the business jungle.
Imagine the following scene. Midday sun, no shade, no cooling breeze. Just a shimmering horizon stretching out before you like an optical illusion. The ground beneath your feet is cracked, hard, dry, as if it too had long since given up hope. With every step, you feel your body using up more energy than it is getting back. Your mouth goes dry. Your thoughts grow heavier. You don't notice it straight away, but your system is already starting to shut down. In the wilderness, there is a truth hotter than any granite rock. You can go longer without food than without direction. But without water, you can't survive at all. Water is, in a way, unspectacular. It's not a summit-conquering moment, not a heroic act. It's fundamental, quiet, but absolutely non-negotiable. And it is precisely here, in this brutal simplicity, that true leadership begins. Welcome to Digital Leadership Lessons from Survival Training. I'm Florian Knoibühl, a certified survival trainer and project and program manager in complex environments. Two worlds that seem to have nothing to do with each other, yet are governed by the same laws. One of them is leadership means managing thirst. The story from the wilderness. It was a hot summer day in July in the Leventina Valley of Ticino when I learned a lesson in leadership that has been proven true time and again ever since. There were 4 of us on a 3-day horseback tour through a landscape that develops Mediterranean heat in summer. By late morning, the sun was already high in the cloudless sky, that deep, almost motionless blue that foreshadowed a long, hot day ahead. There was hardly any wind, and every step kicked up a little dust, which slowly settled back onto the dry ground. We had planned the day well. That's part and parcel of any serious horse riding tour. Calculating water rations, setting the pace, determining possible rest stops. On paper, everything had been carefully thought through, and that's precisely why the start of the tour felt calm and controlled. We rode at a steady pace, chatting now and then, and everyone had enough provisions in their rucksacks. After about 3 hours, I noticed that one of my colleagues, let's call him James, seemed a little listless. On a steep section of the mountain, we had to lead the horses we were riding by the reins and walked ahead of them ourselves. The sun beat down mercilessly on our already overheated heads. James was in good physical shape. He was fit, motivated, and exactly that sort of person from whom you wouldn't expect any particular lapses. He moved calmly, kept up the pace, and at the first glance everything seemed perfectly fine. And that was the problem, because, in fact, James was drinking far too little. He wasn't dehydrated. He wasn't inattentive, nor had he underestimated the situation. He simply hadn't realized how much fluid his body had already lost. With little riding experience, he had focused more on adjusting his position in the saddle so that the pain in his backside would ease. The heat was so dry that the sweat evaporated almost immediately. His shirt wasn't visibly soaked, There was no obvious sign that would have indicated a critical loss of fluids. From the outside, everything seemed under control. His gait was steady, his breathing even. Until the moment he suddenly came to a halt. He stood with his legs slightly apart, placed his hands on his thighs, and breathed noticeably deeper than before. When I asked him if everything was all right, he lifted his head briefly and said in a surprisingly calm voice, "I feel dizzy." It wasn't a dramatic moment. No collapse, no panicked cry, just a short sentence uttered almost casually. And yet, that single sentence encapsulated the whole problem. James had been thirsty for hours without really noticing it. His body had long since begun to switch to survival mode, whilst we still believed everything was going according to plan. Neither he nor I had picked up on the subtle signs in time. At that moment, something became very clear to me. This wasn't James' fault. It was a leadership error. It was my leadership error. I first gave him about half a liter of water and explained that he shouldn't drink it hastily, but in small sips, so that his body could absorb the fluid better. After that, we took a longer break, sought out the little shade offered by a rock formation, and waited. After about half an hour, his condition began to stabilize noticeably. His breathing became calmer, his gaze clearer, and the slight drowsiness slowly gave way to normal alertness. Another half an hour later, he was able to stand up again, and we continued our way, more cautiously, more slowly, and with far greater attention to something that had previously seemed self evident. That moment has stayed with me, not because of the danger itself, but because of the realization that came from it. Thirst rarely announces itself dramatically. It usually begins quietly, almost imperceptibly, long before anyone stops. The parallel with business. A few months later, I found myself in the middle of a complex IT project. Regulatorily sensitive, politically challenging, technically complex. Viewed from the outside, everything was running smoothly. Structures in place, governance sound, regular reporting. And yet I sensed something that felt familiar. People were becoming quieter, meetings were becoming more formal. The energy in the room was waning, not abruptly, but gradually. No one had protested. No one got heated. But something dried up. And suddenly I had to think of James. I asked a simple question in a workshop. Do you actually still know what the real priority is here? The initial reaction was defensive. Of course. But after a while, someone said, "We work very hard, but we no longer know what really matters." It wasn't a competence issue, not a problem of resources. It was thirst. Not physical, but structural, emotional, cultural. The four forms of team thirst. I now recognize four forms of this thirst, time and again. Thirst of information. People see fragments. Decisions are made somewhere. Changes of direction occur. The team works, but in a fog, without a clear picture. Thirst for meaning. Tasks pile up. Sprints follow one after another. Backlogs fill up. But for what exactly? For whom? With what overarching goal? Without purpose, motivation begins to evaporate. A thirst for recognition. It's not just the result that counts, but also the effort. If this effort goes unnoticed, a quiet withdrawal sets in. Thirst for connection. Am I really part of something here? Or just a resource in the resource plan? The danger isn't the conflict. The danger lies in the silence that precedes it. Long before anyone resigns, long before a team openly disagrees, it begins to dry up. The key insight. One sentence has stayed with me ever since, both as a trainer and as a project manager. Thirst is not a condition. Thirst is a signal. And signals are there to be read before they become loud. In the wilderness, you don't wait until someone collapses. You observe their gait, pace, and posture, and actively ask questions. In business, however, many managers wait until something escalates, until someone resigns, until a retrospective meeting turns into a tribunal. Yet the system has long since spoken, quietly and subtly. Leadership means hearing the quiet before it gets loud. Practical tools from the wilderness to the meeting. What does that mean in practice? Firstly, regular updates on our direction. Out in the wilderness, I regularly explain, where are we? How far do we go? What's changing? The same is needed in a project. Not 30 slides. 2 minutes of clarity, that's often enough. Secondly, the refueling question. Don't ask, is everything okay? Because that reflexively elicits a yes. Instead, how full is your tank on a scale of 1 to 10? This question opens up possibilities. Anyone who answers 3 shows you where you can start. Thirdly, meaning before task. Before the next ticket is assigned, before the next sprint begins, briefly explain why it matters. 30 seconds of context can save weeks of energy. Fourthly, reduce complexity. Chaos costs energy. Unclear priorities accelerate burnout. Clear decisions are like clean drinking water. They stabilize the system. Reflection. Before I finish, I'd like to leave you with 3 questions. Where is your team currently running dry without anyone saying so? Which tank hasn't been refilled for weeks? And perhaps the most honest question, where are you yourself running dry? Because you're so busy looking after others. Managers are not immune to thirst. They too lose energy when they lack direction, purpose, or recognition. That was episode 4. Leadership Means Managing Thirst, from the podcast series Digital Leadership Lessons from Survival Training. If this episode has given you food for thought, a spark of inspiration, or perhaps even a mirror to hold up to yourself, then please share it. Perhaps there is someone in your circle who is quietly dehydrated right now. In the next episode, we'll discuss a phenomenon that has shaken me equally as a trainer and as a manager. Management by Ghost Town. Why absence is more deadly than making mistakes. Until then, read the signs, fill the tanks, and stay alert in the wilderness as well as in business. Survive the wilderness, thrive in the business jungle.
Survive the wilderness. Thrive in the business jungle.